All right, guys, not much happening in the MMA world this week, but one thing that did go down this past weekend happened in New Zealand at a good friend, Dan Hooker's home city. More fights, more action, more stories, and I have the man fresh off his trip back from New Zealand here on the program, my good friend Oscar Willis from the Mac Live. Give us the tea, give us the goss, the backstage, the behind the scenes, all of the stuff. And you went in there again, Oscar. You got to experience it. You got to experience the action.
Yeah.
One more time, and it just gets juicier and juicier, does it?
Yeah. So it was, I went down again for it because it's always good to see Dan, and it's like just a fun thing to be a part of. And sort of, obviously, Dan lets us post it on the Mac Live. So it's sort of a good thing to do. This time was all women. It was a women-only tournament. I know the largest prize for women fights in New Zealand history, $50,000, and certainly for open weight division, right? Maybe there's some women who's fought for that before, but like for a tournament open weight, largest purse ever. The smallest fighter was 60 kg, which is probably 135 pounds, something like that. Mm-hmm. And then the heaviest was 180, which is considerably more. That's like 400 plus. So there's a wide range of weights, and I would say to be fair, a wide range of skill levels, but they were great fights.
Dude, just before we get into this one, that first one, you put it up on the Mac Live, did an incredible job of editing it. Everyone checked it out. There's a couple of versions of that. If you guys haven't checked it out, click in the description below. I've got it all linked for you. But kind of took off, right? Like something about Dan, the way that he does it, the passion that he has for it, and the way that it was put together, it's almost like got a life of its own now. Like people are super pumped about it. It's kind of one of the hottest things right now in the space, it feels like, outside of the big mainstream stuff.
Yeah, listen, I'm going to be realistic and curious in like how the second one does. Everything's a novelty the first time out. So maybe it won't transcend, but the feedback and comments I read seem to really enjoy it as a product, right? I think when, you have 7-hour-long fight cards, or, fights can start dragging on if their decisions are about 3 rounds. I think a minute-long fight is incredibly digestible. And then the way that Dan and I chose to present it is to not have any of the waffle in between. Just go fight, have a bit in between tournament stages, and then just do the fights back to back. And I just think it's like, so let's say there's a fight that's perhaps underwhelming. All you have to do is wait 1 minute before you get to see a different fight. And I think because that's very digestible, it also means even though these people are complete strangers to you, I think, and the impression I get is that you can start following like, oh, this guy did really well in round 1 and then 2. So he's got like, you can start recognizing them as the tournament gets smaller and smaller towards the end. And I think that's what will happen with this women's one as well. I think as the rounds proceed, you'll start recognizing, oh, she did really good, she got a knockout, and so on and so forth. And I think it makes you invested, because also at the same time you realize you're not investing a lot of time, right? It's like if it goes to the end and it's shit, which it isn't, but let's say it is, it's only an hour, and you can like stick it on while you're cooking your dinner or anything like that. So I think as a product, it's great. And I think we're at a time, look, me and you, every time we get on these calls, just bitch and moan about the state of MMA. But like, I think we're at a point where
cards like this.
Yeah.
A great graphic. I who made that one.
Thanks, mate. I think we're at a stage, not in just MMA, but in sports in general, where like we're getting a crossroads between traditional sport presentation and now like the TikTok generation is growing up old enough to want to consume sport. I think Dana White kind of opened the doors with Power Slap, right? Like that is about as social content orientated presentation as you can have, and that's why it succeeds so well on social. I think in longer form content, it might sort of lose its appeal a bit because sometimes the slaps can be a bit samey, but as social media, it's undeniable. I think this and 1 minute fights might be in the sweet spot. So that's kind of why I think it's working for now. And I think the presentation, like it's been in back garden, this one's in a biker shop, like it's the spontaneity feel of it, I think helps as well.
Yeah, I think it's cool, man. It kind of takes me back to UFC 1. It's like you don't really know much about the people. You get to know them through the fights. Everyone has their own cool person they go for. It's kind of mysterious. It's fun. It's exciting. And Dan does a great job doing it, and you do a great job of bringing it all to us. Just quickly, though, we went from the backyard to a bike shop. Break this down for me. Obviously, a little bit of a change. No more going into Dan's bushes. No more Dan yelling at people for going into his bushes. How did you like the bike shop?
So yeah, and I don't want to speak for Dan here, but I think there was an element of like, if you do it in his garden again, one, the police will know where that is now.
When you were there, did you notice like helicopters circling around where you were at Dan's house this time around?
There was a police drone over his house on the night of. Literally sat above us for like 20 minutes as we're just looking at it. I was like, why is it a drone, not a copter? He went, I think we've been upgraded to the special crimes unit. I was like, so I think the feeling was if you did it in the garden again, one, it might get disrupted a bit quicker than he would have liked. And then two, I think, like I said, it's a novelty. And if you see it in the garden again, you might be like, I've already seen this. So he was looking for places to host it. I believe a gentleman by the name of Uncle Ling Ling put up his bike shop. And we hosted it there. And again, same sort of vibe, same medic, same referee who did a fantastic job, same weigh-ins, same protocol, just a different venue and a different look to it.
I know we're going to see some of the behind-the-scenes stuff in the video that you're going to put together.
Well, maybe not this time, mate, because I don't think Dan or I were as camera-friendly this time. I think I had to cut out a lot of my bits, bro. I was struggling, if I'm being honest. It was a bit of a heavy evening, the night before. So.
For Dan, though, no beers on the job. Have a look at this. Great knockout, by the way.
Yeah.
There you are there.
Give me a beer, so drinking for a beer. It's a beer. Fucking lame.
Yeah.
Dan was locked in, right? Like you and Dan were there. Big night, maybe the night before, but it's all business as usual. You're both doing your thing. But the guy's always locked in when it comes to business. Huh?
Dan takes it very seriously. Like I think the first video he posted was the same knockout as that from a different angle. And he literally looks at the girl on the floor and just takes a sip of Monster. He is so, and it's just, as in the first one, if people saw just next, like he doesn't want to waste any time. But that video there was where I didn't even ask, just tried to grab his beer. As much for myself as to also not have him drinking on camera, to be fair. That was actually my motivation. But he was doing the matchmaking then, and he was locked in, and he didn't have a time for my shenanigans, really.
Last time I remember you were saying you were like in Dan's kitchen with a kettle, boiling mouth guards, this and that at his house. What are a couple of funny, like behind the scenes things from the bike shop that sort of stood out to you? Was there anything that happened off camera that you're like, oh man, this is like...
Yeah, there was a couple of bits, but I can't say his name, but a very well-known UFC fighter was also there in attendance from the local area. And before the first fight started, they were just getting stared out by some dude on the other side of the room. And eventually it got to the point where he had to be like, why are you looking at me? Is there a problem here? And then Dan immediately was just like, there's 400 people here who'll kick your fucking head in if this escalates. And then it just like straight away was like, no issue. So that was a bit strange. Other than that, like it's, a girl got cut and they had to glue her cut back together. So we had to wait 5 minutes for her to be able to like continue. But that was all right. And then there was like one thing that was really interesting and a sort of a topic of debate was because obviously there are just less women in fighting, and certainly in like a local area that could attend. There was like 3 teammates that were in the same tournament. And so I think the semis were between 2 teammates, and you could sort of see how that affected them during the fight and stuff like that, So there was like the first one, I think, because it was, the first one was a little bit more sort of wacky. I think the second one was people had seen the first one and came a lot more. Some of them did. There was a couple of ones that you're like, why did you sign up? But yeah, like everyone had hand wraps ready to go. Everyone like knew the sort of procedure and stuff. There was I'll try and be respectful. I'd say a lady in her 70s who,
what?
yeah, well, let me finish. There's a lady in her 70s who, like, I think it's fair to say, has a certain degree of mental illness. But apparently is a bit of a local legend in the area. She showed up. The first word she said was, "Do you fucking want some, cunt?" to me. And again, I was like, why is it every time I come here, someone starts on me? And then she put some gloves on, didn't have a mouthpiece, but she took her false teeth out and was like, "I'm ready." And again, Dan was just like, next, like he just completely had no time for it, but she was there boxing it, like ready to go. And it was, so that was quite funny. There's a bit of that in the full video. Like it makes her trying to shadow box and Dan's just complete apathy to it. It still made me laugh. But yeah, so there was, again, those things, those events like do draw like a particularly colorful character crowd, I guess you'd say.
Dude, that's awesome. The lady with the false teeth, is she in the video? One of the videos?
She's in the video, yeah. She's in right before it starts. Someone's like, "Oh, you got to get your gloves on." She's like, "I've already got them on." And then she's
Love
like,
it. Let's go, lady. Let's go. By the way, like you mentioned, there were some heavier fighters in this one. Just a little taste here of Instagram. A couple of heavier ladies here. And like, you look at this, you're like, dude, these chicks would knock me out in a heartbeat right here. Oh, look at this stuff.
Fucking G's, let's go.
Yeah, I think the girl in the white was the heaviest girl.
Really?
But like, she, you sort of look at that and you think like, oh, well, their cardio's not going to be great, but I'm not going to spoil any results. But the girl in the white was very good and did not gas. So like, again, it's a minute, right? But she performed really well, that girl.
God damn.
And you can see in the comments, Baby, that's the girl we saw knocking out someone a minute ago. That's Baby. She's the lightest girl. So that's like, again, that's like, you're looking at that size versus that skinnier girl we saw earlier. Like it's a couple of those matchups got interesting quick, you know?
It is actually interesting because, you know, you think the heavier person's usually going to win when these kinds of things happen. And I'm curious to see what happens in it. I think that's one of the things people love to tune in. It's like, well, what is this person at this weight? Yeah. How do they go against this? But it feels like, just from some of the clips I've seen, some of the slimmer people have gone out there and put on shows, man. Like some of these smaller chicks are just like out of control.
Yeah, well, it's like you say about, it's like going back to the old UFC days. It's kind of, there seems to be something of a trade-off, right? If you're really, really big in these environments so far that I've seen, you're probably one of the lesser technical guys, and the smaller ones are the ones who are technical. So it's an interesting like graph of where does one overtake the other, which I think adds to it too. You know, like it's, and again, like you said, like usually if it's a really long fight and you're fighting someone who's 450 pounds, used to see it in the Pride days, right? Like you just run around them for long enough, they're going to get tired. A minute, if they've even trained at any length of time in their life, they'll be able to sort of manage that minute a bit better. So you can't rely on the bigger person gassing out necessarily. So it's funny, right? Like we're talking about it, and it's a minute fight in a fucking garage, but already, as I talk about it, I can see strategies starting to develop. You know, if you just watch it and get a grip to what it is.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's just some great fights. Like, so this is going to be dropping on the channel. Is that today?
Yeah. Again, Dan and I's communication is like not necessarily ideal. So I realized it was getting dropped from that time because of that post. But yeah, so I guess that's in probably about 4 hours, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So we'll get to see the full thing here. Look at this. Crazy stuff here. Like this lady here, man, she is just throwing. Hey, look at this lady, guys. And this other lady's just copping it and just moving forward. Unbelievable stuff.
That's the thing for the men and women in that part of the world. They all have great chins. And it's very hard people to crack down there. Another, you were talking about like funny side stories. Like I got hit in the face. I think it may have even been in this fight. She took like a big fucking overhand. The girl slipped it, and I was right behind, just bang, like right.
No
there.
way, really.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, okay. And Dan gave us all a big lecture, like, don't fucking step back. Like, you are the ropes. Like, when they get to you, push them back in. And then he was like on his phone trying to read the next matchup, and they get there, and he's just like leaning back while on his phone. I was like, bro, you didn't even put an arm out. You just would try like, get away. So, yeah. think it's on form.
What's the vibe down there now for these fights? Like, I imagine a lot of people want to be invited to this thing. Like, it's an invite-only thing. Like, it's becoming, from what I understand, just by watching it, just by speaking with you and Dan, this is like a hot ticket now in New Zealand. It feels like this is like everyone wants to go there. Not many people can. It's kind of like the hot ticket.
Yeah, very much so. Like, in fact, first time and this time, when Dan and I were like, sort of just hanging out, walking down the street, he got asked multiple times by general members of the public, like, oh, how do I get a ticket?
Wow.
Like, the sort of like joking, not joking kind of way. But he's really strict on it being like, fighter gets a +1 and that's it. And then obviously special people that he doesn't care if you go, basically. So like I said, some people from CKB would go and stuff like that. So you do recognize like a lot of the people from the first one, like I said, his judges and all that are all the same. So there is an element of like the teams back together. And then I think because it's a +1 situation and because there's a promise of more of these, like no one kind of wants to be the cunt to ruin it, so everyone sort of has to behave even if they don't like the way it was scored or whatever. I think it's he's got a really good way of like keeping it fun, people engaged, but not like letting it spoil out into what it could be,
Hey, just before we wrap up, man, I know you can't probably reveal much, but yeah, it's safe to say we might get another one. Probably a different group of people, maybe not ladies this time. Maybe they focus on a different weight class or location.
Trying to remember if he said this publicly or not, but I think like the next one is not in Auckland. I'll put it that way.
Okay, wow, cool.
Yeah, and I believe the setting will again change. It'll be in a different venue. It won't be in a garden or a biker shop. It'll be on the boat on international waters. It'll be a new. It'll be a new Tekken arena. Yeah, it'll be a new like fucking Street Fighter place. Yeah. Yeah.
Final one here. I've got a preview show coming out with Luke Thomas. That's going to happen on Sunday, I think, here, or maybe Monday. But we speak a little bit about what's next for Max Holloway if he beats Dustin Poirier with this whole BMF title in line. And Luke kind of brings up that, Charles Oliveira could be a good one for Max Holloway to fight for this BMF belt. But I also brought up, and I think that Dan Hooker, Max Holloway for the BMF belt, like, to me, just makes a lot of sense right now. Like, if you have this whole BMF belt, let's say if Max does retain it and beat Dustin, feels like a different kind of pathway for a lot of these guys who are truly BMFs and legends in the sport who maybe won't be fighting for a title for a while. What do you reckon, man? Like, what would you like to see next for Dan? We're probably like maybe November-ish.
Yeah, I mean, like
maybe, I don't know anything official, but that's what it feels
well, he
like.
said like they asked him to be backup for that fight, right? Are you frozen? No, there you are.
Yeah, we got frozen. Sorry, that's what it feels like.
He was like, he was asked to be backup for that card. So there's clearly an interest in him performing for BMF. Obviously, as his friend, I'd love to see him get any sort of title opportunity. I think a lot of that's good. I saw Charles called out Max earlier. So again, that one's right there. I think a lot of it comes down to kind of Max, because I imagine if Max beats Dustin, he's going to be like, well, why do I have to fight for a BMF belt? Like, I want to fight for the lightweight belt, I would imagine. I'd imagine
No.
But then again, I never really agreed with making the BMF belt something you defended. I thought, like, listen, we are aware its purpose is to like get a title fight on a card or whatever, but I never really like. They kind of fell into that because of Gaethje and Holloway fight, but it's sort of like. Doesn't really make sense if you have to defend it. So what, a heavyweight could never be a BMF or like heavyweight, you know what I mean? So
and then it's like, is it a weight class thing? Because it's like,
so what now?
Ilya then the BMF because he just knocked out. You know, like, does that just change hands like that?
So if it was up to me, like, even if you could just have Max beat, let's say Max beat Dustin, or if Dustin beats Max, then you could definitely do this. Then you could do Charles and Dan. Like that, you could do any of those. Lightweight's in a funny spot because it's like everyone in the top 5 or 6 probably need one win to get a title. It feels like they all need one win, right? Paddy was in the ring, but kind of feels like he needs one more. Gaethje beat Fiziev, but kind of hasn't, has been out. So you could argue he's one more. Armin fucking shot himself in the foot. Like Dan could, if Dan and Armin fought, it's like everyone's kind of one win away. So I do think anything could happen, but yeah, for sure, like, I feel like it's an inevitability that Dan fights for the BMF belt. It just makes like all the sense in the world. They could have fucking slapped it on the Gaethje fight, you know. Like those guys at lightweights, there's like any one of like 6 combinations you can make that are all BMF worthy. I'd just be curious what they do with it if Dustin were to win. You know.
I know. Do you reckon he actually retires?
Yeah, because I think there was like a temptation for the Poirier fight, and I
big fight.
Yeah,
fight for him, maybe. Like I don't know. Like I reckon Poirier probably beats him, but if you're Dustin, you're like you back yourself in these exchanges. Like you believe you can
and I
overcome.
think he certainly stylistically seems to suit Poirier better than Charles, right? But I think while he was probably kind of open to that, I think the sort of fact like. They don't really do this right for retirements, you know. Like they don't give you your hometown and fucking wish you well. They get you killed at the apex, you know.
Yeah.
And so I think even just from the tone of his interviews he's doing, I saw he did one with Bond. I didn't watch it, Bond, but I saw he did one with you. But like, I think he's starting to realize like you can't have a retirement fight week and then fight the same year, you know? Like, it just doesn't make sense. It would just kind of destroy everything he's achieved by even bringing the UFC back to New Orleans, which he had a massive hand in. He had to negotiate the deal with the mayor and stuff like that. So I think it's kind of like he'd probably like to, but realizes it's in bad taste to do so. I think he should. Fuck it. Do you know what I mean? Like I would be amazed if the UFC don't at least try. And then also for Poirier, just how funny is that? You're getting known as this guy who kills fan favorites, so then you fucking beat Dustin in his last fight. Like, she's like the 4th like beloved fighter gets murdered again. Like, you know, so that'd be a funny gimmick. He could be like the legend killer, like Randy Orton or whatever. But yeah, I would like to see that fight, but it also depends on what Dustin looks like. Again, I'm sure Max Holloway is going to have something to say about all this too. You know, like he, it's not like he did shit against Poirier. You know what I mean? Fucking was jabbing his face and stuff. So I'm sure he wants another crack at it. And yeah, interesting times.
Cool, man. Well, look, we'll all jump on Mac Life. We're going to check out these fights. And of course, we're going to check out your coverage next week. UFC 318.
No, sir. I fly to Florida tomorrow morning where I'll be covering the BKFC Summit.
Ooh.
They're
going to be announcing some big fights.
He is announcing big fights. And then the day after that, I fly to UFC Nashville, where I will work Nashville, and then I'll fly to New Orleans.
Perfect. So we'll see you at UFC 318 fight week. No, I'm kidding. The BK, I'm actually interested to see BKFC making some big moves. I want to see what the summit brings. I want to see what Conor has to say.
Yeah.
I am interested in Wonderboy Thompson, and dude, Derek Lewis may very well be fighting Tom Aspinall for the belt if he just knocks someone out this weekend and has a funny interview. Please don't fucking tell me he's not fighting for the belt if, like, Gane doesn't want to do it and Almeida is injured and the UFC is like, we're just going to make it happen.
Yeah, I like Derek Lewis is what, like, if he wins this fight and then fights another guy and knocks him out, he's fighting for the belt for sure.
Bro, like it happened with DC. And, dude, I can't wait to see you at the press conference. Hopefully we'll get Dana White maybe at a press conference. I love seeing you.
I saw he was doing a pop-up restaurant thing in Nashville. So maybe he's at Nashville, in which case he is. Then I will be asking him, who's fighting at the White House, mate?
There it is, man. Yeah. Mac Life, that's where it all happens. Us coolest. Thanks so much for joining me, man. Have a great trip.
Yes.
Big adventures coming.
Trips, plural.